And welcome back to the Purple Menace podcast presented by Duchess Burgers. This is Ryan Osborne, staff writer, purplemenace.com, with the publisher and the owner of the site, Billy Wessels. Billy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man, and I think you put a little extra emphasis on publisher that time, and I like it.
And owner,
feel,
of course.
And owner, of course. And I like it, and you know what? It's a good burden to bear. It's one I'm really excited about because we're going to talk about a little TCU football tonight.
We definitely are. This is round 2 of the Purple Menace podcast.
Take 3 of round 2.
Take 3 of round 2. We had a couple of do-overs here in the beginning of the show, but as we said last week, you can catch us each Thursday evening at 8 p.m. out on the Duchess back patio. We'll record it live, but post it to the site afterward, probably around 9 p.m. each Thursday before the War Room. But come on out, join the conversation. If you're listening to this right now, you obviously missed your chance. But nonetheless, round 2 for the Purple Menace podcast. What has happened in the week since we've been on the air? I think the latest development, there's not going to be a quarterback
no
competition
quarterbacks.
crowned.
TCU is out of quarterbacks.
Yeah, until the LSU game. But Billy, you were out at practice this afternoon. We're about 200 hours, I think, a rough estimate from kickoff against LSU. Billy, what was going on out of practice today?
That didn't sound very rough. It sounds like you've done a lot of nerdy math to get to that number.
Well, there's 168 in a week, so we're 2 days after that, so roughly around.
I didn't even know that.
Hours.
I know they have what's the song from Rent? 525,600
What happened in practice today?
All right, practice today. Get me back on topic. You get me musicals, I get off topic. Basically, you say we're at practice, and it's tough to really get a vibe of how practice went when all you can really do is talk to Gary Patterson for about 10 minutes afterward. It started off with him talking about the new rules for the Big 12, and not only just Big 12, NCAA football in general, about the targeting rule. Talked a little bit about the linebackers, a little bit about the O-linemen. Talked about some quarterbacks around the Big 12, and didn't talk about his quarterbacks too much. But he does have 2 of them, and he is not committing to one guy yet.
Yeah, since we last met last Thursday, Sunday afternoon, we had media availability in Patterson's office. Actually, he got to show us some pieces of the new uniform. I think Frog fans might have some mixed feelings about how much red is involved, but we'll get to that later in the show. With a big storyline, we asked him Sunday again who's going to be the starting quarterback. Has he even thought about it? Has he discussed it with his offensive staff? And he told us you should probably stop asking because he's probably not going to reveal it until either Casey Paul or Javon Boykin runs out there against LSU. His reasoning, and I think it's a very rational approach by Patterson. He doesn't want to give LSU an edge, whether they, because like he said, Boykin and Paul Hall are both very different quarterbacks and what they bring to the table. If LSU doesn't really know who to, know to prepare for a specific one, that kind of gives them an advantage in a game where they have a lot of people are picking LSU to win. So, I mean, would you agree that this is sort of a smart decision, at least from Patterson's standpoint?
Oh, yeah, I said that here last week. I'm full on don't announce a quarterback till the first snap of the game. And it sounded like Patterson hinted at that again today. He did say that you might see both of them standing one on each side at kickoff on next Saturday. So we'll look forward to seeing that. And I do think it's smart. They are very different guys, as you just said. I'm literally just reiterating your points. But Javon Boykin is much improved. In the one practice we get to see him throw, he did look very good. He's been working on his throwing motion. He apparently had a private quarterback coach all the offseason he's worked with to get that throwing motion better. It's just a matter of him deciding when to run, when to throw, and getting that decision much quicker. We saw that a couple times last year. He was quick to run the ball, and that led him to getting a couple of neeks and bumps here. Neeks? That's a new thing, right? Neeks and bumps, getting hurt a little bit, tweaking his ankle, tweaking his knee a little bit. But I think if he can get that down, I think he'd be a very dependable guy. And honestly, I think we might see both of them during the LSU game. And I think that'd be a really interesting way to look at it.
I said 3 weeks at the beginning of fall camp that if Casey Paul isn't starting against LSU, then something went wrong over the course of the 3 weeks of camp. But apparently, Javon Boykin has improved that throwing motion that kind of hampered him last season. They had some issues converting first downs, I think, inside enemy territory to use just a horrible cliche there. But apparently he's improved his throwing motion. His decision-making has probably been a little bit better considering the year of experience he has behind him. But I still think that if Casey Paul, for whatever reason, if he's not starting against LSU, then I don't think TCU has nearly the advantage they do if he is starting. He gives them so many options on offense. I mean, to use another cliche, he's a gunslinger. We saw that in his first game against Baylor at Waco. We saw it against Boise State. He went into an arena or a stadium at Boise that no visiting team had won in 13 years, and
The Smurf turf.
the Smurf turf, and he throws for 473 yards. The guy gives you stuff on offense that Trevon Boykin, I think even an improved Trevon Boykin, does not give you from a passing standpoint. He capitalizes when he gets in enemy territory. I think if they turn him loose, if they throw him 30 to 40 times a game, their chances of beating LSU, of knocking off, a perennial SEC contender, rise rapidly.
I think we're looking at upside here. Paul Hall, the upside with Paul Hall is Heisman finalist. He has
It
potential
really
to
is. I mean, he's the best quarterback in the Big 12, and he has the ability to not only be Big 12 the quarterback of the year in the Big 12, but he can contend for a Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, he has that kind of upside. Where Trevon Boykin, I don't think has quite Heisman potential yet. He could get there. He could get the legs and arm going fluidly. But I think right now, I think the best choice for TCU to go and win and contend for a national title would be Paul at his best. If he's at his best, and we saw it last year, the first 4 games, he would 10 touchdowns to 1 pick. He didn't throw an incompletion for the first 25 passes or something like that, 24, 25 passes last year. When he's on, and TCU's offense is scary good. So I don't know if maybe something's up with him. Maybe that's the only reason you see Boykin. I don't know. I think keeping the decision close to your vest is a good call by Patterson.
The biggest question last season, I think the biggest question in the offseason, the biggest question especially since fall camp has begun, who's going to protect these two quarterbacks they have? I think if you go with Boykin or if you go with Paul Hall, you have viable options in both of those guys, but who's protecting them on the offensive line? We've mentioned this. You lose Tayo Fibulager, you lose Michael Thompson. Fibulager just up and quit the team. Apparently he's going back to BYU. Thompson kind of had some medical issues that he probably wasn't going to get to play inside anyways. But Patterson, has said something interesting earlier this week, and I think he said it a previous time too. The offensive tackle position, despite the loss of Tayo Fibulager, and despite the thinness they had at depth last season of that position, that's the most improved position on this team. He even said, he went as far as to say, is Halapoulivaati Vitae. I like how that just rolls off the tongue. He said he was
so confident in that.
better than Tayo Fibulager, who was likely an all Big 12 offensive tackle. I don't know how much I buy into that just yet. I think that's Patterson trying to convey some optimism, but he is very confident in his tackles, not so confident in his guards.
Yeah, he really is still trying to figure out that guard position. I asked him today about Jamil Naff. Jamil
Naff, Oklahoma City native.
There you go.
I
knew an Oklahoma guy sitting to my left would know everything and more about him. Probably knows what hospital he was born in. Probably the doctor that delivered him. That's getting really too far into
Del
it there.
City High School.
There you go. So, and he kind of shrugged that off, the Jamel Naff news and the question, to really talk about how just young the guards are and how he's not sure and how you could see a tackle starting a guard and that was about all he had to say on the topic. I just felt it's kind of weird. He didn't want to address one guy in particular, just talk about how young they are and how much progress he can see, especially in the first couple weeks there. Here he sees you got the LSU game and the Southeast Louisiana game, then you got a little bit of time off before the Tech game. And I think he's really excited about that week right there. He pointed to that, about getting the guys a chance to kind of regroup and reevaluate kind of what they've done and then get them going again.
Patterson, for the most part this fall and even last spring, he's actually been pretty cordial with the media. He's actually given us a little bit more information than that we're accustomed to, but we're getting down to less than 10 days till kickoff. And he's really, he's playing it tight to the vest. He's not giving away much, and especially at offensive line, there's going to be lots of shuffling around. James Dunbar can play anywhere from left guard or right guard to left tackle or right tackle. Eric Tausch is going to play guard and center. Probably Joey Hunt's probably going to be your center, but Tausch could be plugged into that, immediately. Could probably get lots of playing time there. I don't think he wants to tip his hand much to LSU as far as giving away what that offensive line is going to be. And we flat out asked him several times, what is your starting offensive line going to be? And I think the only absolute at this point is Avion Collins will be playing either left or right tackle, and there's still some variation there. He seems the one guy that's really entrenched in his position. It depends on which side of it. I would assume left tackle. I mean, he seems like he was the best tackle they have right now, so I would think he'd probably protect the blind side. But there's going to be lots of shuffling around. Another position that there's going to be some shuffling around, some by-committee sort of scenarios going on is linebacker on defense. Probably I would say, if not the weakest position on the team, the second weakest to offensive line.
Yeah, I don't know. You say weakest, and yet I'm still thinking that
I think
this
there's some
team.
potential there. There
Oh, there's
really
so much
is.
potential there, and that's the thing. Weak is maybe a wrong word. Inexperienced, I think, is probably the right word. They are so athletic with Anderson, John Anderson, and Marcus Mallett and Paul Dawson, those guys, and of course Paul Whitmill and Sammy Douglas. I think that is a really good linebacker core.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see all 5 of them play this year in some form or another. And since you only play 2 linebackers at a time, I think the secondary is so strong you can kind of make up for that a little bit. But I think the athleticism with those 2 linebackers, whoever 2 they may be, I think he's going to be pretty strong and probably not the best in the Big 12 this year, but with that kind of potential to potentially be that good.
I think we know what TCU is going to get with Marcus Mallett. He was plugged in last season, eventually became a starter. He provided a little bit more bulk at a position that TCU was almost playing more of a 2 nickelbacks instead of 2 linebackers. Mallett
What's worse than 1 nickelback? 2 nickelbacks.
2 nickelbacks.
Unless you're Canadian, unless you're a fan of terrible Canadian bands.
I see what you did.
You got that? Okay.
Joke of the show so far. That said,
very low bar.
You know what you're going to get out of Mallett. Dawson was a guy who was in the doghouse all last season, and he sort of came out of that doghouse last spring. But what is he going to give you on the field? I mean, I don't know if there was issues off the field with him, but on the field, he's a guy that there's a lot of question marks with. And Jonathan Anderson is someone you would assume could provide you, a very athletic guy who used to be a strong safety or a free safety. He's about 6'2", 225 pounds. He could run. He's probably in the 4'6", 4'7" range. There is a very high upside there with Jonathan Anderson. What's he going to bring to the table, though, playing at linebacker? I think right now, I think you said it, Sammy Douglas and Paul Whitmill have had a great fall camp, but I think they started to hit a wall towards the end of last week. And right now it's Paul Dawson, Jonathan Anderson, and Marcus Mallett. And 3 of those guys are going to have to play 2 spots and play it very well for this team to really excel and take advantage of all the other weapons they have on this defense.
Yeah, I'm looking. I actually just pulled up Paul Dawson's bio real quick. It's 6'2", 230, transfer guy. And, he played in all 13 games last year. It says provided depth, which means wasn't a starter, but still played an integral role. So I think he's familiar enough with the defense to come in and do good work. But, again, can he handle the whole starting job? Yeah. Can he handle it down in and down out? That's a weird way to say that. You can say game in, down in, down out. I kind of like that, though.
Down in, down out, down and out has been the issue
exactly.
with the linebackers. The rest of that defense, though, is solid. I think the defensive line, there's some question marks there, obviously, without Devontae Fields. And apparently there was some rumors started that he was coming back, which you could go ahead and say what Patterson said about that today.
Yeah, those got squashed really quick the other night. A different site said, hey, maybe he's coming back. And then about 20 minutes later, our buddy Stephen Stevenson with the Star Telegram said no. Yeah, I asked Stephen about that today, and he said he actually contacted Patterson that night when he saw the tweets. Hey, look, is there any truth to that? And Patterson said no. And then again today, he kind of threw this out in passing, but he said the Fields will not be playing in Game 1 and Game 2, or at least Game 1. He's not suiting up for Game 1.
I think Patterson was put in a tough situation considering Jeremy Hill, LSU starting running back, their leading returning rusher, was voted back onto the team after an assault charge, if I'm not mistaken, and after some previous fight. Yeah, he had some previous
different assault issues.
Yeah, so he was voted back onto the team, and I think some TCU fans were like, hey, well, maybe this means we could get Devontae Fields back. But even so, I think if you bring him back, despite the violations the differences between what Fields did and what Hill did, you still can't bring a guy back after really putting your foot down and suspending him for 2 games, especially, probably one of their biggest games of the season in LSU. But on that defensive line, John Kuntz is a veteran guy who's going to give you what he's going to give you. He's not going to be outstanding, but he's also not going to be a detriment to the rest of the defensive line.
He's smart and athletic enough to be a really good defensive end.
Yeah. And one guy that also has stepped up that TCU fans haven't seen on the field since 2010, Matt Anderson. He's had multiple knee injuries. He had a medical redshirt, but he's back. And would you say he's probably working with the ones at this point, or is James McFarland in that role?
I think you're looking at Anderson with the ones, and Patterson has said a couple times this offseason that he has been kind of the surprise story. He's the guy that he's looked at as being a really – I'm trying to think of the right word here just a really good story about how he's fought through everything and come back, and he's coming back stronger, and he's going to be very good this year. I think he'll be an integral part of the team. But I think you're looking at him as going to run with the ones, while Fields has been working out with the ones and twos, but I think Fields has been working out mostly with the twos so far in the fall.
Anderson isn't a young guy. He's been around the program since, the beginning of 2010. I mean, he's a redshirt junior. He's not a young guy, but he hasn't played much. I wonder if there's going to be some sort of an adjustment, an in-game adjustment, because the last game he played, I think, was probably San Diego State. I mean, this is the Mountain West. His last game was, it may have been a team like Colorado State. And San Diego State was one of the better Mountain West teams that year. You think there's going to be sort of an instant impact adjustment he's going to have to make?
Well, of course, you go from playing Colorado State to playing LSU, which is arguably
welcome back to the field.
Which if LSU's in the Big 12, they'd be vying for the conference title. I mean, it's so wide open this year, of course they would be.
Yeah.
But you're going from an average Mountain West team to that. That's such a drastic comparison there. It's been 2 years since then. He may have worked on the middle part of the game while he can't be physical. That's a big part of it, is getting mental reps too.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be fine. I don't know if he's going to be. He's not going to shatter the world like Devontae Fields did last year, but I think he'll be fine and be adequate, at least for the first two games. Unfortunately, the first game might not be good enough with adequate. You might not be able to get past LSU.
I think there is a possibility that TCU needs to go in there and considering the losses they've had on the defensive and offensive line, I think they're obviously going in to win the game. Like Herman would say, you play to win the game,
yep.
But you also don't
want
to
get
guys
cliches
injured.
tonight, by
the
way.
Yeah, I'm just
so
full of cliches.
Heavy.
While we're on the topic of defense, though, the secondary is the best in the Big 12. I don't think there's many people arguing with that. With Jason Verrett, one of the best cornerbacks in the country, I think you could argue that it's one of the best secondaries in the country. Zach Mettenberger, LSU's quarterback, not the best passer. How do you think they could use this secondary to really, I think they can make LSU's offense even more one-track than it already is. They could really, bring an extra guy into the box because Mettenberger's not going to give you much in the passing game.
Yeah, but he's not. You sound like he's a terrible quarterback. He put us a
big
numbers. He threw for 300 yards against Alabama.
He did. I don't think you could overlook him. He almost threw for 300 yards against the best team in the country, the best team of the past decade. But that said, he also struggled against a team like Auburn and a team like Texas Tech, which
Arkansas.
In Arkansas. He was very inefficient at times, and against a defense like TCU, a secondary, you would think that it would be kind of out of the norm for him to have a big game throwing the football.
I think you made a good point there by saying bring an extra guy in the box. With 5 defensive backs, you're not going to see them in a whole lot of even 4 wide receiver sets. I don't think.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple 3 receiver sets, but LSU's going to be one on each side and pound the ball a lot. So I think you can definitely bring in an extra blitzer, maybe even. I think it's another way of kind of messing with his head a little bit. Bringing a blitzer here, blitzer there, blitzer everywhere. Sure, why not? It worked for New Orleans in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, blitzing everyone at every single play. So I think different looks like that could definitely be an advantage for TCU, and with that athletic secondary, and I think even in the SEC, LSU's not going to see a secondary like TCU has. I think TCU and Alabama are probably the 2 best secondaries, and I honestly don't know what Alabama has. I know they have guys get drafted every year. They seem to do all right in the NFL.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if these are. I think definitely the secondary is the strongest part of the defense. And I was actually talking with the rivals UT guy earlier about the strengths and weaknesses of this TCU team, and the secondary is what I said was the strongest part probably.
Before we move on to some recruiting news, there hasn't been much of the past week other than Dakota Allen committing to Texas Tech, but we'll get on that in a second. There's some Purple Menace patrons, as I'll call them, out here tonight at Dutch's Hamburgers on the back patio. Does anyone out there want to ask some questions, maybe join in on the conversation? Is there any,
You got something? Come over here.
Ask anything.
Drop
Yeah,
your
just
name,
come over here.
Drop your name, drop
Yeah.
your Twitter. Drop Facebook. I don't know. Where do you want people to get you at?
I mean, Twitter, so.
Just say your name.
My name's Justin, and my question would be, how do you think my question would be, how do you think TCU's offensive line is going to do against the LSU front seven? I mean, they don't really have a rebuilding year. They usually just reload. So how do you think they're going to be able to stand up against them and always all that pressure they can bring, with those big boys in the middle? So
You're right. I mean, they lost several guys on that defensive line, but they do not rebuild. They reload. They're going to be as good as they usually are. They've been for the past 10 seasons. I think on the offensive line, we touched on it earlier in the show. It's a matter of those guys that I think the guards. Wouldn't you say
It's
guys
the guards.
like Lloyd
The guards are
Tunstall?
going to be the key. I think at tackle we're going to be okay. Guards, TCU's going to be okay. It's just a matter of getting consistent guard play. And LSU they had 8 guys off that defense drafted last year, and it's a defense where you don't want to face late in the season. You want to get them early when they're still getting used to it, still getting their feet wet. And it will be a younger group. And of course, they got all 4- and 5-star guys over there, but they haven't played together much. So I think that'll be an advantage for TCU getting an experienced line, even though there's some holes there. Getting a more congealed team unit versus a young unit that LSU is going to have.
And even with the weaknesses that you have at offensive tackle, the strength of your quarterback is going to kind of limit the damage that you're going to lose on the edges. It's all about creating running lanes for B.J. Catalon, Aaron Green, Wayman James inside. Lloyd Tunstall's a big guy. He checked in at 330 when he visited in February. He's down around 305. But he's a big guy. Matt Pryor, 6'7", 350, just something stupid.
He's like Loch Ness monster. Every time someone mentions him, he gets a little bit bigger. He is a mammoth beast though. So I think there are ways for TCU to handle the defensive pressure LSU is going to bring, because they will bring pressure no matter how young or inexperienced they are. It's just a matter of using Paha or Boykin as a way to kind of depress some of that pressure.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate Justin and the rest of the Purple Menace fans coming out tonight each Thursday night.
We got like
you
8
can join us.
here.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone else wants to join in, feel free. Any questions, you can give your own opinions on.
You can kick your buddy out of his chair and come over here and talk, whatever. Just grab the mic for me. I'm not using it much anyway. Ryan's doing most of the talking. He's got the show on his back.
We got some stage fright.
If you don't want to say anything, we'll get to. Oh, okay. Here we go.
We got some more questions coming
in. Bill here. I'm an old student. I want to know, you guys talk about in the media the quarterback, and that is obviously very important, but we were talking earlier before you on air. I think linebackers are the big deal here, Gary Patterson's defense. Tell us who, if anyone, Gary Patterson's been hitting is going to be a surprise here, and how they feel going into the game.
You're right. Linebacker has been, I think, the one position that's really separated Gary Patterson's defenses from the rest of the nation. I mean, for the time he's been here at TCU, I think the guy's Jonathan Anderson. I think he's the guy that has the physical ability to really step up and make an impact. I think you would probably agree with that. I mean,
he's kind of a wild card because he is a former safety. He's still getting used to playing linebacker, but he is such a physical specimen that he can go in and adjust that right away and be, I think, probably I'm looking for a word here. Be a boom, I guess, for the defense here. Be a guy who can really
instant impact.
Instant impact.
Cliche.
Thank you. I can't think of cliches. I had to go to my right hand man.
My bag of them right here.
Yeah, there you go. I think he's the guy you're going to watch for the show. I think he's the guy that if there's a big play made, it's probably that guy who probably made it. So,
okay. I guess we'll move on to a little bit of recruiting, which, there hasn't been much going on. Dakota Allen, one of their top linebacker targets, committed to Texas Tech on last Friday. It was a surprise. I think later in the week they started to shift. I think TCU started to kind of shift out of favor with Allen. This was, I think, a clear example of Cliff Kingsbury bringing the energy, bringing the youth. Bringing the swag, as Billy just said. I mean, how far do you think this can actually carry Texas Tech on the recruiting front? Because Dakota Allen is a pretty highly sought-after prospect.
Oh, yeah, he was definitely a sought-after guy. Obviously, he was down to, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech. Ended up going to Tech. So I think, it's obviously a good addition. Anytime you can beat your other Big 12 rivals to a guy, that's what you want. Well, looking at their recruiting class right here, you've got a bunch of 3-star guys and 2-star guys, which, and I'm like you, I don't necessarily think that's a huge deal. I think it's important, but I don't think you can judge a class by that. TCU had 2- and 3-star guys for forever, and they won the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Most of those guys weren't more than 3-star. They might have had a 4-star on that team. So looking at what they have here, I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, you got Derek Dixon, who's a guy we looked at a little bit. Joseph Clark, Ivan Thomas on the defensive line. I think they're
in Oklahoma, Ivan Thomas.
you love your Oklahoma guys. Deshaun Johnson's another guy they got recently who was down to TCU and Tech, and he's a pretty good little safety. So I think they'll be okay. I think they got a good class coming in. I think they'll definitely be a team to look out for in the future. But they don't. I think they're still probably a year or so away from getting the class that Kingsbury wants.
To get the latest recruiting scoop, be sure to check out the War Room each Thursday night, posted after the podcast. Join PurpleMenace.com. Try 7 days for free. Just sign up. I mean, you don't even have to pay anything for a week. Check it out.
Right now, if you go to the site and sign up, you can use the code 30 for 30, 30 FOR30 as your promo code, and you actually get a $30 gift certificate to anything in the fan shop we got here. A lot of this would be a good segue here. Talk about the new stuff in the fan shop. There's a new T-shirt going around that CCU fans are talking about that maybe is hinting at the new helmet for the LSU game. Maybe not.
There is. I think it was a shirt. If I'm explaining this right, it sort of had a glassy look to it. It had
Glassy
glass
look,
shards, and it had red involved too. Lots of red.
Shattered
involved in
purple
it.
helmet with
Yeah.
red over the eyes to signify the blood, I suppose. You know, I don't know. I don't mind the red, but I think it's still a little weird. The TCU I went to was all purple, and I think it's weird. Do you know there's a TCU yellow? That's a color. There's a color called
I did
TCU
not know
yellow.
that. I hope
If
we
you
never
look,
see it.
if you look, well, no, you see if you look at any of the dorms, the old dorms are all TCU yellow.
Oh,
That's the official
the
color
cream.
of that brick.
Yeah.
It is TCU yellow. You can buy that at Home Depot, I'm sure, or Lowe's. We're not sponsored by either one of them.
Yeah.
So whichever one you feel like going to. You know, the red is interesting. I think they're going off of the they shoot blood out of their eyes thing, which is great. But you know, I think it's a little too much red in the shoes and the socks and the gloves.
I think Nike likes that though. I'm not
Of
sure
course Nike
Patterson
likes it.
enjoys that. The new uniforms are going to be released, Friday today. If you're listening to it, 4:30 p.m. Or after their practice.
After practice, it'll probably be closer to 6,
Yeah.
and they're actually going to allow media members to go to the unveiling.
Yeah,
So
that's going to be cool.
You or I or both will be there to see what it's like when they show the jerseys. And actually, they'll be showing to the team for the first time too, so see their reaction live.
Complete uniform coverage by PurpleMenace.com. But we do know the cleats, the bottom of the cleats are going to be completely red. The gloves,
Like those Gucci red bottom shoes or whatever.
Exactly.
Louis Vuittons. I don't know.
Actually,
I know it's a thing.
I think you got a rap lyric mixed up there.
Okay.
But let's talk a little bit about the rest of the Big 12. Today, Trevor Knight was named Oklahoma's starting quarterback. A pretty surprising decision by Bob Stoops. Blake Bell was seemingly the favorite. Blake Bell has scored 24 touchdowns in his Big 12 career, or in his OU career. He's a junior. He was the favorite to get the job, and now the redshirt freshman Trevor Knight was named the starter today. What are you seeing in that quarterback battle and the rest of the quarterback battles in the Big 12? There's a lot of indecision here, but there's still good quarterbacks out there.
Oh, yeah, the going thread, I remember at Big 12 Media Days, I was there, and the going thread was, so-and-so is not, they're not announcing a starting quarterback. They're not announcing a starting quarterback. My favorite was Mike Gundy. He's a man. He's 40. He's not announcing a starting quarterback today. So it's a lot of options out there. Tech will probably be starting a freshman guy. And we actually asked Patterson about that today at practice about, hey, what do you think about Tech will have a freshman, Oklahoma have a freshman, Oklahoma State, he doesn't know yet, having that kind of issue of younger, inexperienced quarterbacks. He goes, his direct quote was, I'm not going to feel any sympathy for him. I didn't get any phone calls after I had to move a running back to quarterback on Thursday.
I could have sworn Mac Brown called him with the sympathy card.
You think so, Mac Brown? Hey,
Mac
hey, Coach.
actually
Hey,
may have
GP.
done
I just
that.
want to apologize for
Now
you
answer that
having
for
to
Chris.
start a freshman there, a freshman running back, a quarterback, but you'll go get him. And then Boykin went and got him. Went and got him on Thanksgiving. It's not a good Mac Brown. I don't do any impressions, as you can tell by everything I've said. Not so good on that.
I think the one thing to really look out for, though, we've had lots of quarterback competitions, but even the guys who don't earn those starting jobs are going to have an impact. If you don't think Blake Bell is going to be a big part of the TCU game October 5th, then you're sadly mistaken. He's going.
The Belldozer.
The Belldozer. They will have to prepare for that, whether he's starting or not. Same goes for Oklahoma State. J.W. Walsh, another dual threat guy out of Denton Guyer High School. He made a big impact last season as a starter. Started 3 games, provided a ton of offensive production. Clint Shelf's probably going to get the job for the Cowboys, but J.W. Walsh will be involved, especially by the time especially by the time that game rolls around on TCU's schedule. A lot of quarterback competition, but a lot of quarterbacks out there too. It's almost like a good problem to have for each of these schools. I think it's a good problem to have.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it was Andy Reid said this when he was at Philadelphia. I think he had Michael Vick and he drafted someone else. It's like in the second round, he was a second round pick on that. He's like, you can't have too many good quarterbacks, and you really can't, because if anything, iron sharpens iron. There you go. That's actually a Bible. It's a Bible cliche for you there. One good.
We love Bible cliches. We love coaching cliches. We love it all.
We love cliches. So I think you can't go wrong with a good quarterback, with two good quarterbacks. TCU's bringing in two good quarterbacks next season with Grayson Muleson and Foster Sawyer. I think they'll just compete with each other and make each other better. And no matter who's your starter there, I think they're in good hands. And really look over the Big 12. There's a lot of good people playing quarterback. And that's kind of the thing about the Big 12. It's known for its offenses. So don't think people are only going to score like 7 points a game. You're still going to see 35 to 32 games at least.
Yeah. We will be back next week, transitioning into somewhat of a closing statement here. We'll be back next week. We are, 9 days away from kickoff, I think, this time in 9 days. TCU will be playing LSU at AT&T Stadium in Arlington.
A week from right now, it's 8:35 Thursday night right now. If you are at Dutch's at 8:35 p.m. next Thursday, you will be able to see a live football game on these TVs outside while listening enjoying our conversation here, talking live football.
Right now we're watching a Texas A&M replay.
Yeah, shocking. A&M is beating Mississippi State 31-0, and I'm guessing like week 7 last season because Johnny Manziel's in full effect here.
But yeah, we'll be back next week. Join us out here on the patio of Dutch's Burgers. Best burger in Fort Worth. There's our plug.
$4 pitchers, by the way, on Thursday night for beer.
That sounds like a good deal to me. I think we might be enjoying that post.
Yeah, we might wrap the show up right now and go enjoy a $4 pitcher. So, thanks again for our big fans coming out here. That was unprompted, by the way. We love all you guys.
They actually do someone like us, I think, maybe. But for Billy Wessels, this has been Ryan Osborne with the Purple Menace podcast presented by Dutch's Burgers.
Powered by Rivals.
Powered by Rivals. We will see you next week.
Thanks.